Because of this overlap into the different dimensions of SEO, there's often a lot of confusion around duplicate content. So let's first look at the Google Webmaster Central definition of duplicate content. Generally refers to substantive blocks of text or content across domains that are very similar. So this could be discussion forums that have lots of advertising. This could be store items that are shown in multiple distinct URLs. This could be printer-only versions of a content-heavy website that is duplicate in multiple URL locations. So this is where the terminology from the original video on the page with block level analysis becomes important. This idea of just on-site and on-page duplicate content being affected by the understanding of block level analysis. They can look at a navigation or title tags or a news feed and determine that that's duplicate content on your page, on your site, off your site, etc. And Google has become increasingly aware and sophisticated at determining duplicate content and finding the original source of the content. So we'll look at two different types of duplicate content in this video. On-site being on your site. It's often created by CMSs or blogs or e-commerce platforms, and this will create spider traps to keep the spiders from indexing your site appropriately. That's where we waste those crawl cycles, is with those spider traps. If they're hitting the same pages over and over and over when they come in to index your site, that's going to create a problem with your indexation and create indexation issues. Off the site, it may be that you don't get credit for that content because someone's republishing it before you are. They're aggregating it or they're using it for affiliate marketing perhaps, and these can cause potential duplicate content filters as well. Before I start talking in depth about the two types of duplicate content, I want to step back and look at the history of duplicate content filtering. The filtering really started in early 2000s with the search engines realizing there was this large problem with people scraping and republishing content. And there was a lot of financial incentive to affiliates to do so, for publishers to publish on a mass scale, because they were able to get paid now through AdSense on a pay-per-click basis by just anyone could put up ads and become a publisher with their own content, as well as Amazon and eBay creating affiliate feeds of all of their products and offering those to affiliates. So there was all this duplicate content that was structured and was being republished on the web, and Google and other search engines had to disseminate where the original publisher was and where the content should be attributed to, what content people should be credited for. So as these large dynamic sites got crawled more deeply and there was more ability and technology and hardware available for larger and deeper crawls, they could start to store some of this information and compare blocks of text and do some of the duplicate content comparison that was now becoming so important. The search engines wanted to avoid presenting as many results that were the same. I remember the first bit of scraped content I saw from an SEO person was a directly scraped Google search result put onto a web page that was a result for Apple iPod, and within a week or so at the time he was able to get that ranking in the top 20 search results for Apple iPod, which now you can imagine what embarrassment this would be for Google, the problem that was facing them in the quality of their search results. So the duplicates always force the engines to choose between them. So with this duplicate content filtering, they had to be talented and skilled in this choice of duplicate content. Otherwise, within your site, they may pick the wrong page. If you have duplicate title tags, if you have duplicate headings, if you have 10 pages competing for that same word, it creates that poor user experience and potentially keyword cannibalization. From those 10 pages, Google's going to pick the one that they think should rank and maybe not the one that you think should rank. So there's lots of issues associated with duplicate content, how it became important, but before we completely understand it, we need to know why it became important. And it was because there was a lot of published content, people were using other people's content and not attributing it to the proper publisher. So the first question I get with regards to duplicate content whenever this subject is brought up, and it is a complex one, is it a penalty? And it's probably not a penalty. It's probably a non-issue, low link popularity. Your content is from somewhere else. You republished AP News on 5 pages, non-issue. You may have low link popularity, so you may not be able to rank with duplicate content. You may have low engagement score because your page isn't good. Or it may just be a duplicate content filter. The pages on your website that are duplicate content are probably just getting filtered and not being included in the overall part of your site if you are scraping news and content from other sources. If you have questions on is it a penalty, I wrote a guide a long time back. Aaron Wall wrote a guide a long time back at SEO Book. Generally, it's a filter. It's probably not a penalty or a banning, so don't worry about penalties too much until you get into some more aggressive type SEO. So just because duplicate content doesn't often cause a penalty, it doesn't mean it doesn't often cause problems, and it does. It causes lots of problems, and it does potentially cause penalties. But what does cause the most problem is generally poor URL planning, poor information architecture planning, bad technology that does a bad job of creating these URLs, or just lazy development in SEO that doesn't spot check the URLs, doesn't spot check for printable pages being indexed, doesn't look for a mobile version being indexed on top of the regular version of the website. So the negative impacts of duplicate content can be rippling and far reaching. It can really cause a lot of problems with the way that your site is indexed, the content that is given value and attributed to your site. It splits the link equity between the pages on your website ineffectively. If you're not passing that to the appropriate areas, you may be passing it to a page that is duplicate content and therefore low value or being filters. It wastes those crawl cycles, those valuable crawl cycles of Google coming in and spidering your site and seeing the content on your site and not giving it the full credit because it's duplicate. And it can potentially confuse users if there's circular navigation or this sort of thing. Most importantly, it limits the crawl cycles based on link equity. If I have a 500-page website and I'm getting 100 crawl cycles per month, or maybe 10 per day, I may be wasting 8 or 9 of those, or even 3 or 4 of those on a page that's duplicate that's not important to my website that I should be blocking with robots.txt or redirecting somehow. So some of the common problems associated with duplicate content is mainly replicated blocks of text. This could be from reuse from content from suppliers. If you are a distributor and your manufacturer gives you specs, you could be republishing this as duplicate content. You could be republishing news or press releases, and this can be potentially duplicate content. You could be linking or redirecting pages inconsistently with tracking codes or content management system versions of a web page. Printable pages, font changes, product variations, colors, sizes, product categories, just circular navigation, people linking to domain.com/home and domain.com/home/index.php. This would be circular navigation. This would be strange URLs that are unnecessary and duplicated. Session IDs and content management systems can also kind of create these weird URL parameters that make for some nasty duplicate content. So this is an example of some URL duplicate content just with 3 different URLs that are in fact unique. So if I have the same content on each of those pages, that link equity is being split amongst those 4 pages. The crawl cycles are split between those 4 pages, and each of those would get hit once instead of the one page being hit 4 times by the crawler like it should be. So you need to correctly canonicalize these pages and redirect them, or just let Google know, give them signals with rel canonical that the tracking code is actually not a unique URL, but just a page that refers to the main page. So these are all different versions of that same page, and those dynamic URLs, those tracking URLs, can potentially cause problems. Session IDs is another example of this. It's getting a little out of date. Most people store the information in cookies, but session IDs can be a very bad idea if you're still using that technology. Content management systems, WordPress, big content management providers that were used in the past. E-commerce platforms can create tag and category page duplicate content. If you're tagging your content and creating a page for every page on your website, it creates this kind of flat information architecture and also duplicate content. Common with blogs is date and calendar pages, where it just might be everything that was published in February of 2008, and even if it's snippets or full versions of what was published at that time, it is in fact duplicate content. You can see how printable pages and mobile versions that get indexed into the traditional index would be duplicate content as well. So what are the solutions and best practices for this on-site duplicate content? Well, URL consistency is very important. Robots.txt, noindex, and rel canonical we'll talk about along with 301 redirects in the next section of this series. But these are the best practices, starting with URL consistency, being consistent with the way that you link your site, with the way that you reference your URLs, the way that you get links and people link to you, blocking content with robots.txt, no indexing and no following content with no index and no follow, and then canonicalizing those tracking parameters and tracking URLs, or 301 redirecting non-www to www. The best way to fix on-site duplicate content is with a hand edit, going through and hand editing the code or rewriting duplicate content, followed by robots.txt and these other areas. With robots.txt, it's the best solution if it's set up correctly, but you really need to plan your information architecture effectively, and that's why we teach these concepts of information architecture very early on in the fundamentals and best practices, because they are really important when you're creating your robots.txt and this overall site structure for proper indexation. No follow is another good solution. It's the easiest solution to retrofit an existing site. If you're starting, you can plan with robots.txt, but maybe there's a bunch of old content that was indexed on your domain that someone created long before you were ever at the company. Rel no follow can be a good solution here, along with rel canonical for those tracking URLs. The best solution along with robots.txt is rewriting every page by hand, fixing the problem URL code, but obviously this can be hard, and if you have a CMS in place, you might not know how to customize that content management system. You might not want to rewrite every duplicate content product description. You might not even want to block every product description, and that's why I say it's not always a penalty. It's just potential problems that this duplicate content can cause, and those are the solutions for on-site duplicate content. If you want to get a better idea for setting up a good information architecture or blocking some content, Yoast has some SEO plugins for WordPress that are just phenomenal. Set up a WordPress install someplace and just take a look at this article that he has on WordPress SEO. I promise you'll learn a whole lot about SEO, as well as URL structures and how to avoid some duplicate content. So let's talk about some offsite duplicate content examples and how to fix them. I mentioned if you're manufacturing, your suppliers duplicate your content on their website, your product specifications or descriptions. If you write an article and someone wants to put it on their site, if affiliate sites are writing about your product, if your content's just being stolen or scraped and repurposed elsewhere or syndicated through RSS. RSS is generally one of the biggest duplicate content culprits for scrapers, and then there's special cases with news as well. So before I talk about the specific offsite duplicate content examples, I just want to give some of the important factors that will influence the offsite duplicate content. The first place that the content is placed or indexed. If I publish an article and I publish it on Moz.com, but then I put it on Market Motive and it gets indexed at marketmotive.com first, then it's going to be given credit at marketmotive.com. Potentially. The trust and authority of both of these domains, so if Moz.com has more authority than Market Motive, then even if it gets indexed 10 minutes later, it still might outrank the original copy on Market Motive. Where the links point, if it's published in both places and more people link to one of the documents than the other, the number of copies citing the original, these two factors are going to have a large influence on which piece of content and which page outranks the other one as well. So these are examples of the factors that will impact which page will be superior really in terms of where that content is indexed. So an example here of offsite duplicate content, when the original Kindle was launched, lots of affiliates republished the information and talked about it with the manufacturer's description, and you can see I did a search for that description in quotes, and it came back with lots and lots of results for this. There's lots of people scraping this content. You can see Blogspot, ebooks, top blog area, lots of blog sites that took this content and republished it, repurposed it, to add to their description about the Kindle when it was released. So how does Google decide which of these copies is the most appropriate version? If we do a search for something like the exact match domain playbook, which I did post on Moz.com, if we search for that snippet, we'll see lots of pages where that's republished, where snippets of that come out. How does Google know which of these places it was published first? Well, by those factors that we discussed earlier, and certainly more complex than that, but these are the important factors that go into determining who gets credit for duplicate content. So how do we find this duplicate content on our site, or if people are duplicating our content offsite? There's some tools for this. SEO Book has some tools. You can use Screaming Frog for your internal duplicate content, or Xenu. There's DupeCop or duplicate content checkers to check if people are stealing your content or scraping your content, or maybe just republishing your content, and you want to make sure that you get a link back from those. So there are some ways to find and fix this offsite duplicate content. The first way to do this is ensure that you're the first person to be indexed. If you place articles, make sure you're writing them uniquely. If you're syndicating articles, make sure you're including a link back. And I'll show some examples of each of these individually for fixing this offsite duplicate content. Make sure you're indexed first. Make sure you have RSS footer appends in your content when you're publishing it from a blog or other content management system. And be sure to use internal links within your articles. So this is an example of being indexed first. The way to do this is make sure you have a link on your sitemap or your homepage with your new content. You'll see with Miami Fishing we have both of those just in case people are picking up our fishing reports and publishing them on Joe's Worldwide Fishing Report.blogspot.org. And if he is doing that, I want to make sure that our content is getting published first. So I publish that, I do an announcement, or I do a post on Google+. Google+ is a very good way to get content indexed quickly. You can also do fetch as Google from Google Webmaster Tools and use the tools within Google Webmaster Tools, or just link from the sitemap and homepage, and you'll often get indexed very quickly. So make sure you get that content indexed quickly, and certainly before places that it may be republished. So if it is republished, you can do a RSS footer append. Most scrapers do use RSS, so you can kind of mitigate that by doing an RSS footer. And you can see this is a little tool within WordPress, again by Yoast, excellent developer, and this was found by a content scraper tutorial on how to avoid that on the Kissmetrics blog there, written by Christy Hines, who's an excellent SEO author as well. So make sure you're claiming that content, adding your copyright information, and adding that RSS append to your footer so you're not getting scraped by all the sites trying to steal your content. The final solution to this is to include your internal links within your content. You can see with this article that I wrote on 10 tips to train a link developer way back when, I have some internal links. 3 of the 10 links there are back to my own site to drive users to my content. That way, if someone else is repurposing that content, if they leave those links in, it'll drive them back a few times to my site as well. It promotes increased time on site by leading them to other areas of your site as well. It's good internal linking, and it helps to showcase your best content. If you're always linking back to your best content, you have that in mind when you're writing, blogging. It forces those scrapers to link to you if they're republishing and including any links within the content that they're publishing that they scraped from your site. So include those internal links, at least a couple within every article, and this will help mitigate some of the offsite duplicate content issues as well. This is an example of a scraper. I thought I'd just show one so you could see it. There's oftentimes lots of ads, AdSense up at the top, or ads by Yahoo if they already got banned from AdSense. You can see a little bit of AdSense or ads by Yahoo, and generally it'll be a blog type of site where they're repurposing content and publishing it with ads on top of it, just auto-generating content. That's generally what a scraper is. Anytime someone's repurposing your content, it's a variation of scraping your website to use that information on theirs.